All right, are we back? Give me a second, people. No, Tim, that's not it. I just had some technical difficulties. Probably lost a few people there. And thank you very much to my terrible ISP for this problem, I think. I don't know. Actually, it seems like rebooting helped. I think my upload speed is decent. It's actually good now. And my stream health is good. So I don't know. I guess it was me or my computer, hopefully. I'm going to give this a second and let anyone who was on previously hopefully rejoin us. Or do you make classes? Yes, actually, I do make some classes, and I'll put a link for you in the video description here as soon as the stream is finished. I am in the East Bay area in California, so if that's somewhere you can make it to, yes, I have currently a basic phone repair course that teaches you the most common repairs that we see coming into the stores regularly, and we're actually working on an introduction to micro soldering, which will cover quite a bit more than an introduction, but I don't want to make it, you know, what you would consider comprehensive, because there's really a lot more to micro soldering than it takes to learn in a week. So that is coming up. Hey, Mike, how you doing? So guys, tell me, is it looking okay? I mean, obviously you can, I'm assuming you can hear me. Hopefully the stream is looking okay. A minute ago it was terrible, so I had to reboot this whole thing, and hopefully that made a difference. Hey, how's it going? Ibrahim, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I guess we are back here, hopefully. So in a groundbreaking decision, the feds say that hacking DRM to fix your electronics is legal. It's about time. Probably doesn't mean what we think it did, you know, on the surface, but again, I think this is a step in the right direction, and we need, it's kind of a surprise, really, you know, to see the Library of Congress, who I think it was, yeah, the Librarian of Congress and the U.S. Copyright Office kind of siding with the consumers to an extent, but it looks okay on your phone. Okay, cool. I had some real serious bandwidth problems and contacted my ISP, and it's a long story, but it hasn't seemed to improve yet. It's kind of intermittent. Like, it'll work sometimes and other times it won't. Let's see if the chat shows up here in our stream, because I'm definitely going to have to, where's my chat? Come on, chat. If it doesn't, if I do any editing here, all the chat disappears. So why don't we have a chat on this thing? All right, let's try this. Let's see if we can add you guys. What's the quality of lead-free solder versus silver? The quality, Harvey? I don't know that, I don't know what the difference in quality is. I think that the big concern is, one, you know, they took leaded solder out of manufacturing a long time ago for obvious health concerns, because you don't want to breathe leaded fumes. And we had, probably the biggest problem was when they were using lead paint. Okay, where is my chat? Give me 1 second to see if I can get you guys on the screen here for some reason. There we go. Okay, so yeah, obviously lead is toxic. A lot of heavy metals, when they get into your body in high quantities, can cause some problems. So they took lead off the market. I believe it was mainly because of leaded paint, where they were painting things like, you know, homes and baby cribs, and infants have a tendency to chew on everything they come across. So for kids, it's very dangerous when it comes to brain damage. And even when you get older, that stuff can accumulate and cause reproductive problems, among others. I want to say liver and kidney issues and all sorts of stuff. As far as the quality, I don't think that there's really a difference in, you know, maybe the silver solder is a little stronger, but it's definitely harder to melt, and that's the big issue that we have, you know, not really being in a factory where we have the type of equipment they use for flowing that type of solder. So as far as quality, you know, to my knowledge, there's not a noticeable difference when it comes to longevity of a repair or installing a component. I could be wrong on this, but I don't think there's any difference there. Certainly a lot easier to work with, though. When you get the silver bearing solder, it does tend to be a little more difficult to melt. So I would say that, you know, if you have the choice, you want to go with the leaded because it's easier. But if you're really concerned about the toxicity, then when it's appropriate, you can probably get away with the silver bearing, or the other type, probably in larger products, I would assume, because you'd be using a much bigger iron, where when we're working on small packages, it's difficult to get enough heat into a really tiny area with the tip of your iron, which makes the melting a little more difficult. Now, of course, if you're using hot air, that wouldn't apply. So I know that's not really a straightforward answer, but as far as I can tell, I don't know that there are any issues with using leaded solder as long as you don't ingest them or breathe the vapors or let it absorb into your skin or anything like that. Which I recently found out that you should also be careful about using isopropyl alcohol in large quantities. Now, if you get a little bit of it on your skin, it evaporates, it's not harmful, but there apparently is the potential for toxicity to occur from isopropyl alcohol if you're exposed to enough of it because it absorbs into your skin so quickly. So there you go, another good argument for using rubber gloves, which you've been encouraging me to do for a while. I'm having trouble with lead-free adhering to the board and other materials. Well, again, that wouldn't be a huge surprise, you know, assuming that you have sufficient heat and flux, of course, then it shouldn't be a problem, but I think that those are going to be two of the challenges because it has a higher melting point. What are you working on exactly? I'm curious. And hey, guys, you know, I put these topics at the beginning of the stream so that we have something to fall back on, but I'm happy to talk about repairs as well. I don't want anyone to feel like, hey, all we're doing is talking about stuff that we've read about in the news. I love when you guys have questions about repairs. Hopefully I can answer them for you. I'll do my best. Okay, yeah, so yeah, using the leaded to bring the melting point down, it's definitely good advice. But if you're trying to adhere it to the board, if you're trying to stick it on there, again, you know, outside of mixing leaded solder in there, it's going to be a real challenge reaching a sufficient melting point. You know, if you saw in the beginning of this nightmare of a video that I started earlier, I've been working on game that, you know, a lot of the boards that we use, we found when we got to like the iPhone 7 series, it's difficult to reach a sufficient melting point for solder because they've designed the motherboards in a way that they take the heat, you know, they dissipate the heat quickly in order to protect the other components on the phone. So when the phone starts getting warm, you want that processor and the power management and everything to be able to disperse heat rapidly and effectively. Well, in phones, it's one thing. When you get to game consoles, they are designed to just suck the heat out of the processor because they run so hot. So when you get into melting things like the PlayStation and the Xbox ports, you can see, hopefully at the beginning of the video, someone had some trouble melting those things. So it's not easy. You definitely want a big iron, lots of flux, and then lately when I've been doing the HDMI ports, I have been using the low melt material. I think it's called what's it called, fast chip or something like that, where you actually take this stuff that melts at about 80 degrees, I think it is Celsius, so it has a very low melting point, and you kind of mix that into the anchors on the HDMI ports. Makes them a lot easier to get out. I'll be back finishing repair. Okay, sounds good. Bring pictures, Mike. Okay, so anyways, I thought this was pretty cool. You know, we've been talking about right to repair for a long time, and it has often seemed as if branches of government are not really as interested in encouraging consumer rights as they are for a lot of big companies to make money. So we're hoping that both of those things can exist in the same atmosphere so that, you know, people are happy and they're not being taken advantage of, and manufacturers can still make a big profit. You know, there's no problem with making money, but we don't want to exploit or, you know, otherwise take advantage of someone in order to make that happen. So that has been the real big concern about right to repair. You know, when we start seeing a lot of products with high dollar price tags on them and they last for a year or two and then somehow they stop working, that's an obvious problem. But when we're building in software that makes these things stop working and it really looks like it's being done on purpose, that should be a cause for concern. Now, you know, one side of the argument says, well, hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to buy the product. But let's be realistic. We live in a day and age where if you don't have a cell phone or you don't have a computer of some sort, whether it's a laptop, desktop, whatever else, you're going to have a tough time. And for the most part, Windows, iOS, Android are so prolific that the other choices that exist are somewhat limited. You know, if you went with something like Linux, if you went with Linux or some other operating system for your phone or tablet, you wouldn't have access to the types of applications that a lot of people want to use. So while that is up for debate, all I'm going to say is this. This is really cool. You know, every 3 years, the Library of Congress kind of takes a look at copyright laws and they redefine things, which is a good idea because everything is changing so rapidly. And this time what they said is, you know, long story short, is DRM, which has been something that people aren't really excited about, because it kind of puts limitations on what you can do with the products that you own. And if you ever read the terms terms of service when you install something, it kind of says like you can't do anything, right? And that starts to cause problems when we look at repairing things. You know, you bought something and it is designed with a certain use in mind, and you can no longer use it if your only alternative is to replace it or to take it to the manufacturer. Then you're kind of at their mercy when it comes to how much money you have to spend in order to make that product do what it's supposed to again. So this has been an ongoing battle, and one of the bigger concerns, I mean, I care about consumer electronics, but even more so, I care about people being able to eat. So when we have farmers that are affected by this type of digital rights management where they can't repair their farm equipment when they need to, and I don't know much about farming, but I do know this: the weather changes rapidly, and there's a shelf date on everything. So if it's time to harvest something, you need to be able to do that right then and there, and you don't have 2 weeks to wait for an appointment for a mechanic to come out and service your $500,000 tractor or whatever it is. So back in 2015, they came up with something that was somewhat a solution. Well, now this is extended over into consumer electronics, and what it says for the most part is that if you can figure out how to hack the software on your device in order to repair it, that is completely legal. Now, at the same time, we have to assume that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to do, and obviously it doesn't mean that manufacturers are obligated to facilitate this hacking, and they're not just going to give the software away now that the Librarian of Congress has ruled that it's okay for this stuff to be hacked, you know, as long as you don't have any illegal purposes in mind, right? So what it does say, though, is that they are kind of seeing our point of view and telling us, yeah, it makes sense that if you buy something, you should be able to operate it. And whatever you can do that you have access to, in order to make it work again, should be okay. There should be no laws that prevent that. And this is the big problem, is that manufacturers have hidden behind copyright laws and said that if we allow people to alter our software in any way, then they're going to steal things from us. And you know, it's one thing to steal music and movies and pictures and stuff like that, but it's quite a different thing to hack into the software on your device in order to just make it work the way that it's supposed to. And for them to kind of hide behind this copyright shield and say, well, we can't let anybody have access to anything because they're going to steal stuff from us, that's kind of an exaggeration, I think. So they've changed their stance on this and said it's okay now. As a result, we can all already see the obvious coming, and that will be that anyone who is concerned about digital rights management, if you want to call it that, and controlling their product is simply going to put more time and energy into making it more difficult for people to hack the software so that they can perform their own repairs, among other reasons, some of them which would probably be nefarious. But at the same time, at least this is a symbolic action that says, yes, you can't just say, you buy it, here's how it is, you're not allowed to do anything to repair it. And I'm happy about that. We still have a long ways to go before we can get manufacturers to provide us with information and equipment that allows us to easily repair our devices, but at least this is going the right way. So a small victory. And at the end of the article, they kind of summarize this here. And what this person said, I think, I don't know who I'm quoting here because I don't think their name is down here on the bottom. Let me see if I can find it. Proctor, a guy named Proctor. Who is Proctor? In any case, what he said here that kind of summarized it is companies use the anti-piracy rules in copyright laws to cover things that are nowhere near copying music or video games. We just want our stuff. We're pleased with the progress being made, and ultimately we want to settle this by establishing right to repair. Hopefully that'll happen. If you're not already familiar with it, this is something that there are quite a few efforts going on at the state level, because the feeling is that if we can get it approved by one state, then there's going to be a domino effect. There are going to be a lot of other states that just kind of go along and say, yes, it's time for this to happen. Not to mention the fact that it's going to be difficult for manufacturers to create a product that works for 49 states, but then they have to have a completely separate design for that 50th state where they're going to be selling their product, because it just doesn't make sense to do that. So hopefully that will happen. Hey, what's going on, Nate? Yes, Chip Quick. Actually, Carl, let me grab it because I'm curious. I don't think it's Chip Quick. I think the one that I have is a slightly different brand, but it does the same thing for the most part. So let me get into my box of stuff here. I did try the chip quick and it worked well enough, and for some reason I ended up getting a hold of this, which is called, let's see, it's called Fast Chip. I don't know if you'll be able to see the title here. Oh, is it over there? It's over there. So this one is called Fast Chip. It's probably hard to, there you go. So basically the same thing. It's just a low melt alloy, and it has something in it. I'm trying to remember what the material is. At bismuth. It has some type of element in it that makes it easy to melt. Now the problem with it is that it gets very messy. The moment you touch this stuff, it melts and it takes forever to solidify again. And if you get it into, I mean, it can get messy if you're not careful. What I've been doing is just taking a very small bit on the tip of my soldering iron and flowing that into the joint rather than trying to apply it onto the surface, because like I said, it goes everywhere. And what you want to do for the most part is keep this stuff away from anything that's conducting a signal or electricity, because it's not a good conductor. It works okay for the anchors where you're holding things together, but you don't, this doesn't qualify as a, something that you would use for a soldering joint in electronics where there's going to be a signal going through there. So that's why it's a little tricky, but I got to say it definitely makes the job easier of getting that old solder out. And when you're working with the game consoles, like I mentioned earlier, when you go to solder the HDMI ports back in, even if you're using leaded solder, it's still difficult to get it to bond to the surface because those things just pull the heat away so fast. So lots of flux, lots of heat, big tip, big iron, soldering iron tip when you're working on those, and it'll make your job a little bit easier. I've seen people do them with hot air as well, so that's what we generally do when we install them. Heat everything on the board, push the port inside, and then go in and flow some solder on top of it. But really getting it to flow and bond properly is a challenge. Nate, oh hey Nate, I actually saw your order. Thank you. I'm going to get that stuff out today. I was going to tell you, hey, if you guys are here on my channel or you're subscribed to my channel and you want to order parts from my website, just let me know beforehand who you are, and I'd like to just kind of throw something extra in there for those of you who support the channel. So that is, there you go. And Nate just linked the website. So if you're looking for hand tools, I do sell some of them. Others that you see on there, if they go to eBay, they are affiliate links, so they're not sold personally by me. But I can assure you that anything that you buy on eBay, if you're not happy with, you just let the person who's selling it know, and you'll either get a refund, replacement, or somehow otherwise they will help you out. I understand that people don't generally buy replacement parts on eBay or Amazon, but Nate and I actually had an interesting conversation about this recently, because people within the repair industry will look at replacement parts in one of two categories. Brand this, I bought it from this particular website, who is a company who sells replacement parts, or I bought it from eBay. And eBay parts are put into a certain category of quality, which makes no sense whatsoever, because eBay does not sell or manufacture parts. All they do is allow other people to sell products on their platform. So you could very well have the website that you're buying directly from who also has an eBay account where they sell the same exact product. So the tricky part, of course, is to kind of filter through there and find the reliable products. You can usually do that based on feedback, and this is another advantage when it comes to things that I can't get from my normal suppliers, is that you go onto eBay and you look at the feedback of the seller, and you get a pretty good idea of how reliable their customer service is, their product is, their quality control, and so forth. So if you're buying in quantity, obviously, it doesn't make sense to be buying through eBay. You should have an account with an official parts supplier that has a good reputation and a good return policy in case you end up getting defective stuff. But I personally don't have any problem with buying from eBay or Amazon or anywhere else, as long as I know it's a good product. And to say that it's an Amazon, eBay quality product doesn't make any sense, because that can be anywhere from 1 to 100% satisfaction. It's kind of a silly mindset, I think, to have, but to each his own, whatever works for you. In any case, I do have some hand tools on my site that I sell, and you'll be able to see those because I'll take you directly to my PayPal checkout, whatever you call it, cart, whatever it may be. So anyways, let's move on here since we got so far behind because of this stupid thing not working. I'm gonna have to edit the heck out of this video. That's why I've got you guys in the chat window there. So here's another one that you should know about, you might be interested in. Hey, Joshua Fitzpatrick, how's it going? Having a capsule on parts and suppliers would be good. Good feed would be a good feed in your future live. Oh, in live streams. Okay, yeah, good call. I'll definitely do that. Amazon, Newegg, and even Best Buy are all offering their front end for resellers. I think Walmart is too, if I remember correctly, Greg. Ordering stuff from China could take 1 to 2 months here in Canada, especially with Canada posting rotating strikes. And we have the same problem here. You know, we have Chinese manufacturers that sell to distributors in the US and then they sell directly to customers. But if you buy directly from them, it might be, it's always some strange number like 39 days for delivery. So you can find people on eBay who are distributing those same Chinese parts as well. Obviously the question is, you know, how do you confirm that you're getting the same brand that you bought last time? So I'm with you if you're buying things in quantity, but again, one of the advantages of buying through those platforms is that you've got several layers of protection. You know, you've got eBay, first of all, who's concerned with sellers being reputable. You have PayPal, who will generally handle the transaction. So that's another way that you can say, hey, I have a problem with this. I want my money back. And if you use a credit card, then you've got that third layer as well. So it's hard for me to believe that people say, hey, if you buy something through eBay or Amazon and you're not happy, you're just out. You lose. You don't get your money back. I don't think that's really the case, as far as I know. Yeah, it hasn't been in my experience. So the other thing here is there's an iPhone bug. If you haven't already seen this, you guys probably have. This comes up all the time. You know, every so many operating systems. I don't know where people come up with the time to figure these things out, but if you press a certain combination of buttons, you use Siri, you hit the home button, up, down, you know, slide something, you can hack into the phone, which is crazy. You know, obviously Apple will push an update to fix this problem, but it certainly should be cause for concern if someone had their phone stolen, for example. Obviously, the person who has a hold of the phone, if it's got a lock on it, they're not going to update it, but they might figure out, hey, here's a way that you can now hack into this operating system. So it's strange to me that these things continue to keep happening, but at the same time, not a surprise, because we see them every few months. Oh, this new iOS came out. Now people can hack into your phone. So I think this is going to be an ongoing thing. This is from Jose Rodriguez, a Spanish amateur cybersecurity specialist. Well, that would explain how he had the time to go through and figure this out. And the process is fairly complicated. There is a video. If you look up passcode bypass iOS 12 through 12.0.1, it will show you how to do this. This is on YouTube, obviously, and I'll add this link as well to the video description when we get finished here. And here are the steps. So it's kind of crazy. Call the attacked phone from another phone. Don't answer the call. Instead of tap, I think he meant to say instead, tap on messages and tap custom to reply via text message. Enter any word in the text message box. Tell Siri to activate voiceover. Touch the camera icon. Invoke Siri with iPhone's home button. When the screen becomes black, swipe your finger on the screen up to the top left corner. Double tap on the screen to select photo library. I mean, you can see how many steps are involved. So this isn't something simple. So again, even though this guy is a cybersecurity expert, how he came up with this combination, I have no idea. I suppose you try one thing and then you see what other options are available and then go from there, you know, until you fit all of these, all these parameters. And from there, once you get inside, you can actually get access to the entire photo gallery. Let me back up here just a second. Anyone who knows about this discovery and has physical access to your iPhone can get full access to your photo album. Not only that, but you can take pictures and send them to any other phone that uses Apple Messages. So the short fix for this, once again, is to go in and disable Hey Siri. That's the long and short of it. If you don't want people to be able to hack into your phone this way, if you turn Siri off so that she does not respond unless you unlock the phone first, you don't have to worry about this hack. And that seems to be one of the common vulnerabilities, you know, in the last few iOS versions that have these sort of backdoors in them, is that somehow one way or another Siri is involved because she has to have access to certain functions on your phone. So if you're okay with not having access to Siri without unlocking your phone first, this is probably the safest course of action you have until they push an update that patches this, if that happens. Greg said, thing is with eBay, you have to pay for shipping item back, and sometimes the shipping is more than the item. Has that been your experience, Greg? I'm sure that that's going to be a problem, especially in Canada. I have bought some things from eBay that did have issues, and they actually just sent me a replacement part. So I'm sure that it probably varies from one seller to another, but obviously no way we're sending anything back to China. You're going to be spending, what, probably at least 30, 40 bucks on just about any any part size package that has to go there. Not a realistic option. I think if that came up, I would try to dispute that with the seller, you know, through eBay or through PayPal and say, look, you know, it's, if I have to send this back to China, you guys should at least pay the shipping and then send me a replacement part. And most of these sellers are very concerned about their feedback as well. So if you don't get satisfaction, you can always go and leave them some negative whatever. Yes, especially in Canada, some sellers are even charging $40 shipping for a $20 part. Okay, obviously that's ridiculous and out of the question. So maybe if you're going to purchase something, it's a good idea to check the return policy and make sure that they don't say that the buyer has to pay for the shipping, which sucks. I know it's another headache, but I would definitely check that off my list then, because yeah, paying $40 for a $20 part to replace, nah, not going to happen. All right, so turn off Siri if you're worried about this. Again, if you want to see the video, I'll put the description, put the link down in the description, and let's move on. It's 2:32. Apple and Samsung fined in Italy for throttling phone performance. So as I mentioned earlier in the stream, planned obsolescence becoming a real problem when it comes to electronics. Well, there's at least one place in the world that's not okay with that, and it's encouraging to see someone stand up to these big, you know, mega corporations, if you want to call them that, and say, hey, this is not okay for you to be doing this. It is expected that other countries in Europe will probably follow suit, and I'm just going to predict here. This is just my opinion, but I'll bet that a case like this could be filed in the US against Samsung and possibly be won, but I doubt that you could sue Apple here in the US and win. Just for some reason, I don't see that happening for a multitude of, well, we'll see. We'll see if anything does happen in the first place, but this is going on in Italy. Now, here's the thing. As we all know, as phones get older, they go slower, especially when you update them. That seems to be the big thing, you know, unless you have a phone that's being throttled for battery performance. But more than likely, if you have a phone that's more than a year old, the operating system that's currently available from that manufacturer is designed for their flagship phone and is optimized for very late model handsets. So if you have a 2 or 3 year old phone, I don't know why they allow these updates to be installed on those handsets unless they want to purposely make your phone go slower. You might have access to a few more options, but for the most part, you're not going to get the same type of performance you would if you've got a late model phone. The purpose, according to this article, of slowing down older phones, according to Apple, was to improve the battery life and therefore increase longevity. Well, but then it takes you longer to do things because the phone moves slower. So for all practical purposes, it looks like it's just to make the phone seem like it's lasting longer. Let's see. The surprise here is the inclusion of Samsung. I would agree with that. It's usually everyone going after Apple, but they are indeed suing both. And I want to say that they won this for 17, or was it? Oh, where'd you go? I actually had the outcome of this on here a minute ago. So Italy is fining Apple and Samsung 5 million euros for each for intentionally slowing down phones. According to Reuters, Apple was slapped with an additional 5 million euro fine for failing to provide customers information on maintaining and replacing batteries. So it may have been a different article that I was reading, but along the same subject here. They were saying that other European nations would be likely to follow suit and file against these companies. Now the catch, of course, is that they can still appeal this and tie it up in court for several years. So it will probably be a long time, if ever, before Apple, Samsung, or anyone else ends up paying out against this type of suit. And my question is this: where does that money go? Because I didn't see any mention of class action here. So I'm not sure where this money, you know, if it ends up being awarded to the plaintiff. Who is the plaintiff? Italy? I'm not sure. I don't. Let's see. The Italian statement said that both Samsung and Apple's updates had caused serious dysfunctions and reduced performance significantly, thereby accelerating the process of replacing them. So I'll have to do some more research. This I just read today, so I'm not sure who the recipient of that money would be. Margaret, oh, hi, I love your channel and appreciate all your videos. Well, thank you. I appreciate your comment as well. Mike, you're back for the rest of the stream. Cool. So that was a quick repair, dude. What did you replace? An iPhone screen? What could possibly have been so fast? So we'll see if this goes anywhere. It sounds like they won, but they can still appeal. So you know how that goes. And it also states that between the two of them, Apple and Samsung, they actually have more than 50% of the phone market in Italy, if I remember correctly. And for some reason, I kind of always assumed it was way more than that, but I'm probably going by what we see here in the US, which is a whole lot of iPhones and a whole lot of Galaxies, but mostly a whole lot of iPhones, especially lately. All right, so Qualcomm, in the meantime, claims, according to this article in Forbes, that $7 billion from Apple has been unpaid in royalty fees. Now, that's a lot of money. You know, the 5 million euros I don't think is going to hurt Apple too much, but 7 billion is kind of a lot of money. Working with the Shurion, it was an S9. Oh, so pre-assembled frame and everything. Awesome. Shipping on eBay for Canucks is very rare and usually only for very small items for Canuck sellers. U.S. sellers sometimes use eBay global shipping, PGM via Pitney Bowes, $15 laptop hinges plus $25 ship. Okay, I get your point. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy probably a whole lot of stuff if you're in Canada. So I'm with you. That makes sense. Let's see if we can close this here. Let's see. The allegation is the latest in a string of accusations since this epic legal battle between the two companies. If you didn't already hear, if I remember correctly, Apple was using Qualcomm for quite a while for chip manufacturing, and then the impression that I got was that they did it long enough to figure out how things worked so that they could go to someone else to manufacture their own chips and not have to buy them from Qualcomm. And again, don't quote me on that, but I believe this is what was going on for the most part. It happened 2 years ago when Qualcomm sued for roughly $1 billion, saying that the chip maker built its business on older legacy standards, but reinforces its dominance through exclusionary tactics and excessive royalties. Okay. We have a full statement from Apple that started it all, saying that for many years, Qualcomm has unfairly insisted on charging royalties for technologies they have nothing to do with. The more Apple innovates with unique features such as Touch ID, advanced displays, etc., the more money Qualcomm collects for no reason. So Qualcomm was manufacturing parts that went into the phones and appears to be making a claim, as far, in my interpretation here, that they have that they are entitled to some money because of features that are being built into iPhones. To protect this business scheme, Qualcomm has taken increasingly radical steps, most recently withholding nearly $1 billion in payments. Okay, so yada yada. Atherton's research. So what happens here is two big companies suing each other, and guess where the money for the lawsuits is going to come from? Although the Apple and Samsung legal battle lasted 7 years, awarding Apple $539 million last May, we still believe that the two California tech companies will eventually settle, despite the fact that the $7 billion figure gives Apple a huge incentive to litigate for a few more years, which makes sense. We'll probably see this going on for a long time. Perhaps Qualcomm should send Apple a dunning notice on that overdue money plus interest. Maybe, and good luck to them. Yeah, I always have to think that when we see these lawsuits, I don't know. I mean, we have patent trolls. We know that they're a thing. And when we see the lawsuits between Apple and Samsung, yes, you want to protect your proprietary technology, and at the same time, I get the feeling that they're going to spend enough basically suing each other, and if there was a net at the end of the lawsuits, if you looked at both companies' sides of this, and they both ended up losing $1 billion, paying $1 billion back and forth, over time, and it's somewhat evened out. At the end of the day, what that means is that they have to increase their bottom line in order to pay for all these legal fees, because these court costs add up, and obviously all of this stuff, all of these expenses get passed on to the consumer at some point. So probably not something that's ever going to change, but when you think about it, who is really paying the price for this litigation? I see that the Foxconn plant in Wisconsin, and how Foxconn is scaling back the size of the plant that is going to be built. The Verge had an article on it today. Interesting. Yeah, I'd like to see what happens with that as well. And you have to assume that if we moved, especially with all these tariffs and things that are going into effect, and it's funny because now when I'm ordering replacement parts, I'm starting to see little notes that say which ones are affected by tariffs and which ones aren't. But with all of this stuff happening now, if we really could move manufacturing to the US, let's say, hey, this is the right thing to do to help out our economy, is to get these jobs over here, to get the manufacturing over here, to get the, Apple and everyone else to start building their handsets and building everything here in the US. Well, obviously, there are going to be some increases in the cost of doing business. Yes, we don't have to ship it from China all the way over here anymore, but we definitely have to pay wages that are acceptable and legal here within the United States, which are going to be a lot different than China. I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, right? Maybe it's bad. Maybe it's a bad thing that we are buying from companies that pay for the equivalent of slave labor. It's hard to argue against that, right? And at the same time, if we were to stop doing that and start making this stuff over here, I guarantee you the price tag on these phones is going up. There's no way around it, because we have to pay out not only decent wages, but all sorts of benefits. So just playing devil's advocate here, there's kind of a downside to both of these arrangements. And I don't know really if there's a good answer that leaves everyone, not being exploited in one way or another, whether it's through labor or paying ridiculously high costs for products. So Wisconsin's $4.1 billion factory boondoggle, The Verge. Okay, I'll have to look that up. I haven't read that one yet, guys. At the end of the day, after all these lawsuits are settled, consumers will be asked to pay at least $2,000 for their flagship phones. I think you're right, Harvey. And we're approaching that, right? Now that we've broken the $1,000 barrier, it doesn't look like there's any turning back. And I was listening to a podcast, and gosh, I can't even remember where it was. But if you think about this, when Apple went to $1,000 on the iPhone 10 and people bought it, they said that was okay. One of the side effects of that phenomena is that other manufacturers have to start making $1,000 handsets. Okay, if you think about it, whether you're buying Samsung or Xiaomi or LG or anyone else, whoever it is your brand is that you're buying from, the consumer's perception has to be that if there's a $1,000 handset out there from someone else, if you don't have one of your own, then in one way or another, your product is inferior in quality. So just based on that reason alone, it makes sense, and I'm not saying I like it, but it makes sense from a business standpoint for other manufacturers to jump on that bandwagon and start saying, oh yeah, our flagship phone is $1,000 now too. Whether or not it's worth it, whether or not they had to put the money into the research and development or production of this handset, they have to charge people that simply based on the perceived value. And this, I think, is kind of a, obviously there's a downside to that, because you're going to be charging people a crazy amount of money for something that cost a few $100s to make. Okay, they don't have to buy it, right? You could buy something else. You have other alternatives. And at the same time, for someone who works in phone repair, it is somewhat encouraging to know that we still have a significant dollar amount associated with the products that we service. Because if you remember, I'm going to say about 20 years ago, there were free phones because there was such a push to get people to subscribe to wireless services that as long as you signed a contract, you basically got your phone for free. In many cases, you had to pay for taxes or something along those lines. But now that we've reached a point in time where it's not everyone wants a phone, it's everyone has a phone, or everyone has to have a phone. How do you there's no point in subsidizing equipment anymore, and we've gotten away from that, over the last few years, where you don't go to your phone carrier and say, hey, I want a free phone. You're not going to get a free phone. You're definitely not going to get a free premium phone or a flagship phone. So now manufacturers are seeing that if we don't have the carriers paying us for these handsets, it's going to come from someone. That person is going to be the end user, of course. And the question is, how do you continue to grow your business once everyone has a phone? And that, of course, is by getting them to upgrade, buy accessories, or sell other services, which, to an extent, a lot of companies, especially Apple, are starting to understand that they have to sell services in order to continue making a profit. You can't keep pushing a new phone on everyone every year. There are some people that will do it, but there are a lot of people that won't. And I don't like the fact that, at least from my perspective, a lot of this equipment has been inflated to be sold for way more than it's worth. At the same time, that is going to have people come back to us when they're out of warranty and say, hey, can you fix this? I've got this $1,000 phone. I don't want to pay $1,000 for another phone. So Definitely not the right way to get there, but the outcome I think is beneficial for people who are in the phone repair industry in one way. California agrees to delay net neutrality law pending outcome of federal lawsuit. Ah, that's great to hear. I'm going to have to look that one up too, Greg. Let me see. Let me grab this. And, you know, to an extent, I always think that the good news is just waiting to be disproven. That sucks. Let's see. The high-end Pixel 3 is close to 1,500 Canadian dollars. Yeah, it's nuts. And, you know, like you said, Harvey, this is probably going to continue. Eventually, we'll have a normal flagship phone that's close to $2,000. Probably will be an iPhone with the biggest screen and the most storage and the fastest processor you can possibly get. Will probably be with tax and everything else. And if you buy Apple Care, what are you adding onto this thing, like $350 to the price tag? I mean, we're getting there. It looks like it's going to happen. Let's take a look at what Greg said, because I apparently did not see this one. California agrees to delay enforcing net neutrality law. Well, that's not encouraging. I need this tab over here. See if we can open this up, because this is important. And just when you thought we were getting somewhere, let's see, what are they saying? California won't enforce the nation's toughest state-level net neutrality law when it takes effect in January, agreeing Friday with the Trump administration and internet companies who sued the state law should wait for the outcome of a separate lawsuit pending in Washington. Oh, joy. Let's get to the bottom line here. This isn't a setback, said Ryan Singal, a fellow at the Center of Internet and Society at Stanford Law School who supports the law. It was expected that the law would be put on hold, he said, and it's ready to go into effect once the federal decision comes down. Okay. California was in a difficult position, and it was in its best interest to do this. Okay, so I don't want to read that. Well, that's unfortunate, but hopefully this suit will stop. Why does this thing keep playing when I do that? Hopefully this suit will be settled in the favor of the American public and not just in, that of the ISPs who want to make as much money as they possibly can in any way, shape, or form. We'll see. Yeah, they will drag this through the courts ad nauseum. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing. They'll probably just make this take a long time. I mean, sooner or later, people have to get sick of this, right? We can't have unregulated monopolies that just, at least we haven't, for long historically. That's always changed. Hopefully it will. Yes, please give this stream a thumbs up. If you enjoy it, despite the train wreck that it was at the beginning. I apologize, folks. I don't know what to tell you. My stream health is actually telling me it's terrible now too. So hopefully I'm not. Hopefully my video is not looking too choppy. I can't seem to win with these guys, and this is the unfortunate thing. I only have one choice. I need net neutrality to come back so that we get what I get what I'm paying for. But right now I don't. My option is to leave and not have a broadband connection anymore. So I've tried bribing them. I told them I'll pay whatever it takes to make this work, and this is what I get. So, hey, Oscar, how's it going? That gray key workaround to allow police to gain access to iPhone, Apple finally shuts down. Yeah, I actually covered that briefly last week on Thursday's stream, but I ended up editing out the commentary part of that because I wanted to make that stream more about tools. So we probably should come back to that at some point. But yeah, for the most part, we don't know if it was intentional or not, but Apple pushed an update, and now the gray key thing that allowed them to hack into iPhones doesn't seem to be working. And, my concern is this. If there's a way to hack into something, there's nothing that will stop that from falling into the hands of the wrong people. That's the main concern, right? So, yes, we want to catch the bad guys. We want to stop people from planning and carrying out criminal activity. We also need to keep the bad guys out of our devices, and we need to stop identity theft and, people getting into your bank account and all sorts of other stuff. So what's the answer? It just really looks like it's going to be a back and forth battle. Once something gets hacked, someone else, whoever has that or owns that operating system or that device or the rights to the software should be able to fix it. And then, of course, a new hack will come out. We just kind of go back and forth. And that's what's been going on for the longest time. So I suppose there's a window of opportunity for law enforcement. And then at some point, manufacturers say, okay, we need to shut this down, because if there's a back door, eventually it becomes available to everyone, especially people who can take advantage in the wrong way. I missed the train. Were there flames or magic or smoke release? Yeah, pretty much. I don't know what happened to my stream, but it's even telling me it looks okay to me, but it's telling me I have low stream health, whatever that means. Yeah, so everything was not working, but I was just kind of showing a video of some game consoles that I had to say no to, you know, when they came in for repair. In fact, if we have enough time, I'll go back and show you that again real quick. I think I can bring a video up on here somewhere. So let's get through the rest of this. We got about 10 minutes left. So if you haven't already seen it, there are some concept images of the Galaxy S10. And long story short, no notch, but it does have a hole in the front of the screen. It looks like for the front-facing camera, so allegedly or leaked or whatever you want to call this. It's going to look something like this, we think, which will be interesting. I don't know why it's such a big deal to have that, just that tiny little extra 3% or whatever it is of screen real estate at the top. But I guess if I had to choose between a notch and just a single hole in the screen, I think I would go with the latter. There's something annoying to me about the notch. And I don't have a notch on my phone. I'm using the iPhone 8, so maybe I would get used to it if I had it for a long period of time. I don't think it's a big deal, but I think I'd rather take this hole or just a bezel, you know, just a wider bezel across the top rather than having the notch. For some reason, I'm just not a fan. But you can disable it in the software, right? So a recently rumored concept design has appeared which suggests the phone that will almost be bezel-less from the top to bottom will have, I'm sorry, what did I say? Will be almost bezel-less from the top and will have little or think bezel at the bottom. I gotta tell you, for some reason, it seems like every article I read has got words in the wrong places, misspelled, and grammar. I don't know what's going on here. The design concept of the S10 appears to be awesome. It appears to be awesome. Okay, I think that's kind of subjective, isn't it? With curved edges, full screen bezel-less, and notchless design, the images show that Samsung Galaxy S10 will exhibit triple camera on the back and obviously on display fingerprints. Scanner, which I think makes sense. This is a thing to do. Let's get rid of the home button. Let's get rid of all the buttons from the screen. And what else did they say? There was a note in here about how they think that it may not actually be the S10. There was something about the another model here. I think I lost it. It was reported, here it is. It was reported earlier that Samsung was working on less expensive S10 models in order to compete well with other phone manufacturers, including iPhone, Huawei, Oppo, and Xiaomi. These images should be taken as a grain of salt. Yeah, right. So we think this is what it's going to look like, and hopefully Samsung will make a big comeback. We'll see. Apparently the Note 9 is a pretty big deal, so we need competition. And whether you like Samsung or not, you know, if there's at least one other big player still on the market besides Apple, I think it's going to keep them on their toes. And once it gets to the point where everyone's buying the same thing, what incentive is there for a manufacturer to worry about anything other than making money? You know, if everyone's going to choose the same manufacturer, then the only question is how much money they're going to make by charging you whatever they want. There's really not as big of a push for innovation. So I think this is a good thing. And I think it's a good looking phone. And also, it's going to be ridiculously expensive, I would predict, to replace the screen, which is always a discouraging thing about Samsungs in general. All right, one more thing here. Cars and traffic signals are talking to each other. And if you haven't already envisioned a world of self-driving cars, yeah, I think this is kind of a good thing. And at the same time, I always wonder how many people are just going to fight this. You know, when you have a conversation with most people, some are in favor of self-driving cars, but I think there's a real concern that a lot of people have where they just don't trust a machine, right? And you could show a person a machine that can beat any player in the world at chess. It could beat any player in the world at Go. It could have a better track record for fewer accidents percentage-wise than the average driver. And at the same time, there's this fear, I think, of letting go and allowing automated processes to take over things that we have been doing ourselves for, you know, we've gotten used to, right? Like since you started driving, you've kind of gotten used to the idea that you're in control of the vehicle, and that you make those split-second decisions and you trust yourself more than you trust a machine. I hear that a lot, and I always question those same people who have that opinion as to how much they trust the other drivers on the road. Because I think if I had to choose between most of the people that I see driving and a machine, I'm going to go with the one that has the better track record. So top automakers, including Volkswagen, Honda, Ford, and BMW, are experimenting with technology that allows cars and traffic lights to communicate and work together to ease congestion, cut emissions, and increase safety. And I actually just heard about this on a podcast recently also. If you think about it, traffic signals are pretty dumb for the most part. They aren't, what we would call smart devices. There is a sensor built in at a lot of intersections, as you know, where you pull up. If there's no traffic coming from anywhere else, the light will turn and allow you to proceed. In some cases, not always. There are a lot of lights where you can sit there for what seems like forever and there's no other traffic and you never get to go. And that one I never understood. We have sensors on traffic signals that can detect when an ambulance or other emergency vehicle is approaching the intersection so that it can turn the other lights red and turn theirs green so that they can proceed, which makes a lot of sense. Why don't we always have, considering the technology that goes into the average smartphone, just our phones that we use would be smart enough. They would have the processing power and the capability to figure out when there's something coming from here, there's something coming from here, someone's waiting right here, who gets to go next, right? That would be a simple process. And yet traffic signals don't generally have a whole lot built in when it comes to that type of functionality. So it would make sense, obviously, to reduce emissions, because people don't need to be sitting at stoplights when they should be able to drive. They could reduce congestion because we can figure out where the traffic is. If you aren't already using something like Waze, I gotta say it's pretty amazing to be able to find the quickest route to where you're getting to, and also be notified if there's an accident or other sort of traffic activity that's going to slow you down and suggest an alternate route. So this would all give us a lot in the way of making better decisions when it comes to driving, and of course kind of pave the way for the future of transportation, which is inevitably going to be automated at some point. At the same time, it is also going to build even more surveillance into the system that exists as far as travel and transportation and where you're going and who you are and what your habits are. So from a neutral standpoint, not necessarily a bad thing, but certainly a concern if it falls into the wrong hands. If someone can hack into a system, for example, of traffic signals and determine where anyone is, whether they're a political figure, someone who's wealthy, you name it, anyone who's high visibility, let's say a performer, an actor, a musician, anything like that, and can really track exactly where they are or where their vehicle is at all times, figure out where they go, what their habits are and stuff like that. There's some reasons why probably some people would be concerned about that, I think. But it's going to happen, so I guess we don't really have a whole lot of say in the matter. And the good news is this should be a safer way for us to operate vehicles. The benefit, and I believe that there are many, the main benefit I think would be to safety. If we can get on the road and avoid traffic and avoid collisions and reduce carbon emissions and get where we're going faster, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? And again, whether or not we like it, it's going to start happening, and automobile manufacturers are already jumping on this and saying, yes, we want to make this happen. We want to build this intelligence into our vehicles so that they can navigate through the world with as little effort as possible. BMW have a counter which counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 second to green. To a green? It's at to a green light, I assume. While Mercedes says if you drive between 32 and 52 kilometers per hour, you'll get green. Oh, that's interesting. So I guess this is for fuel economy is what it sounds like, part of this. The technology could also help improve safety by transmitting information about traffic conditions directly to the driver. That would be useful. Volkswagen and Siemens are using sensors to detect pedestrians and cyclists at 2 of the crossroads in Wolfsburg. So there again, for safety, a huge benefit if your car is aware of things that you might not catch. And this is probably going to be the transitionary period where people say, well, we're not going to fully automate anything, but we're going to enhance your driving experience by building this technology in. And I suspect that as people get more comfortable with more automated systems in their car, we'll see this happen over a period of time. And probably in the next 10 years or so, we won't be doing much of the driving ourselves, except for some really diehard fans who say, I want to be in control of the car. And I think the question here or really the likely outcome is that eventually you won't be allowed to drive your own car. I suspect that that's going to happen. You know, if we get to the point where everything on the road is automated and they're all somehow connected in a way that one car watches out for another, and it all, at any given time, your vehicle knows where anything within a quarter-mile radius is located in order to prevent collisions from happening, it's going to be difficult for, you know, to believe that they're going to say, okay, and at the same time, if you want to just be off the grid, so to speak, in your vehicle and just drive around on your own, you can do that. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that will happen. And I'm not going to say I'm necessarily in favor or opposed, but I believe that it's inevitable. You know, eventually we won't be in control of the cars, and your option will probably be not to ride in one if you don't like it, I guess. I detest the thought of autonomous vehicles. It gives people excuse to be lazy and not responsible for one's actions. And that's true, Harvey. It definitely is going to change a lot of things. You know, I mean, the benefit would be you would have some safety features that we don't currently have. It would certainly make people less responsible for their own actions in the car. Will that carry over into other areas of life? Maybe. It would also allow people to be productive while they're driving and not be talking on their phones or texting while they're, you know, actually operating the steering wheel. So I think that would be a benefit. But, you know, regardless of how you or I feel, I really think that this is inevitable. You know, I at some point in the near future, it seems likely that there will be legislation that just says that your car is going to automatically drive. And whether we like it or not, I don't know if there's a way around that. You know, it seems, with what we know right now, it seems like the direction we're heading. So who knows? Maybe there will be several autonomous vehicle problems that we haven't even thought of yet that will prevent it from happening. I know that one of them is that when they use this laser or LiDAR system that they have, they can't really get as much information as they need to navigate around unexpected obstacles, you know, not to mention pedestrians. But if there's a cardboard box or a rock in the road, the car can't really tell the difference. And on the Teslas, I know they use a system of cameras that are supposed to be better at interpreting that data, but there's still a lot, you know, ways to go before we can say, okay, these things are completely safe. And that's my main concern. You know, we don't want to hand over control of something to an automated system that's faulty, obviously. Even when its track record is better than the average driver, there's still a problem with saying, okay, let's leave it in the hands of a computer to figure out whether or not we make it successfully to our destination. But I don't know. Although some drivers I've seen here are making right-hand turns across 3 lanes of traffic from median lane with no signal. Yeah, and over here, same thing, Greg. Not only that, but where I live, once you get your driver's license, the requirement to keep that license, to maintain your right to operate a motor vehicle on any road, is to just keep sending money every few years to get a renewal. There's no, hey, your driver's license expired, the laws have changed, we don't know how you drive anymore, come down to the DMV and take a test. It's just send us something by mail, pay a fee, and you get to keep driving as long as you don't have too many accidents, since the last time that you were tested. So to me, that's kind of strange. And we also have, I'm not going to touch that, but there are some controversial topics about age and driving that, you know, have good points on both sides of the argument. Just have people who don't want to drive free Uber credits. Let good drivers who like cars on the road. Yeah, and, you know, I got to say, probably not so much now, but a long time ago, I really used to enjoy driving. I drove for a living for quite a while. I drove a truck. And I liked being on the road. It was fun. I don't enjoy it quite as much anymore. But at that time, if someone said, hey, we're going to take away your right to drive because we have cars that can do it automatically, I would have definitely been strongly opposed to that. And I suspect that a lot of people will be. So who knows? Anything can happen. And once again, today, it doesn't matter so much what we believe. It matters what big businesses want to happen and what they pay legislators to enact or to sign off on. So it will kind of be up to, if you think about it, you know, and I'm not saying I like it, but the fact of the matter is the big companies have the big money, and for the most part, they're going to be the ones who make the rules. So maybe some of the people who run those companies feel like they want to retain the right to operate their own motor vehicle, because if they don't, if we do away with people driving their own cars, that would affect everyone, right? You would think. And I suspect that there are some people who have a lot of money who don't like that idea. So maybe there's hope, Harvey. Maybe we can keep driving. All right, everyone, I'm going to get off of here if I can find the right button to do it. And I'm going to go back and edit this video. I probably should have said this at the beginning. I'll put a note in there. Oh, now my stream health is good again. I can't figure out this YouTube thing, folks. It's very confusing for me. But anyways, I got to get back to work. I'll be back on Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next Monday again, 2 p.m. Maybe by then I'll have my microscope working on this capture card. I just can't figure it out. Nothing seems to cooperate. But other than that, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I will talk to you later. Have an awesome week.